How's it going, friends? And welcome to Comic Talk, the weekly show on my channel where we get together and we talk about comics. I'm Brad, and I'll be your host. So this episode of Comic Talk is going to be a little bit different in that there's no script. Usually I would try to keep to some kind of a script so that it keeps the length of the episode down, but I haven't had time to write one. I've been doing all kinds of other stuff at home, so I'm just going to wing it today. So here goes. So the first comic I want to talk about is actually Doomsday Clock #1, where we're immediately reintroduced to Rorschach, only, oh wait, isn't Rorschach dead? Yes, I believe he is. Didn't Dr. Manhattan do his explodey person thing on Rorschach? Yes, he did. So who's this? Well, as the issue goes forward, we realize that this is a different Rorschach. And how do we know this? Well, he breaks into a prison and he's trying to release a character, a female character called the Marionette, with promise of her seeing her little baby boy again, her son again. And she doesn't believe that it's Rorschach. She's like, isn't Rorschach dead? I heard he committed suicide and, also killed Night Owl as well. And so he proves it by taking off his glove. And the hand that you see, the hand that Rorschach puts forward, is a black fella's hand, which is kind of neat. I do believe that this is Rorschach, but Rorschach from a different part of the multiverse. Now, why do I believe that? Well, because we have different characters who are Superman who are also black, but they're just as Superman as the Superman that I've grown up with. So I do believe this is Rorschach. She doesn't believe him. She's like, you better stop dressing like that. You're crazy. When the real Rorschach catches you, it's going to be lights out. She believes he's going to get a beating for it. But nonetheless, this guy is Rorschach. Now, how is this Rorschach here? Well, let's continue. So he tries to get her to help him find God. Well, who's God? God is obviously Dr. Manhattan. And they can't find him. He hasn't been seen in years. But she won't go, even with promise of getting her son back, until he also agrees to bring her husband with them. And her husband's name is the Mime. At least that's his supervillain name. So they track him down, and he's in the jail taking a beating from a bunch of people, because that's part of his act. And then when she sees him, she's like, okay, come on, we gotta go. We're getting out of here. He beats the crap out of all the other inmates who are beating him senseless. And that, to him, is putting on a show. And they all book it out of this prison, where they end up in Night Owl's old lair with Archie and his costumes. And there's someone waiting there for him. The person waiting there is actually none other than Ozymandias. He's there waiting. So Ozymandias and this other Rorschach, presumably, I'm thinking, from a different part of the multiverse, are working together to try and track down Dr. Manhattan, presumably to save the world. They have to bring him back down to Earth, but he's buggered off somewhere, and they have no idea where. Us as DC fans have a pretty good idea of where he is. He's mucking around in the DC universe proper, doing stuff and rearranging things. So the back half of the comic takes us to Superman, who is sleeping in bed and he's having a dream. Only it's a very bad dream. He's dreaming about the night that his parents died in a really nasty car accident, and it's something that he's kind of always blamed himself for. The point is, he's having a nightmare. Superman doesn't have nightmares. As far as the Rebirth Superman is concerned, this is his first nightmare. And nightmares are very scary and tend to be very hopeless. A hopeful character is having a hopeless nightmare. That's a bad sign. So it seems here what we're seeing is the darkness of that particular Watchmen universe oozing, seeping its way into the DC universe through possibly the presence of Dr. Manhattan. I'm not quite sure. This is a 12-issue series, and this is only issue 1, and it's gonna be a crazy, bumpy, ridiculous ride, and I can't wait to read the whole thing. But that's pretty much what happens in this issue. Now, what do I think of it? Well, the artwork is stupendous. It's one of my favorite artists, so he already gets points for that. He's the fellow that drew Superman like Christopher Reeve, and all of us Reeve fans were like, oh, this is awesome. It's Reeve in the comics. So it gets that. As far as the story goes, it leaves enough for me to wonder what is going to happen, while also I'm sure that there's some red herrings. There's always red herrings in these stories, and so I'm sure that I'm missing things. Matter of fact, I guarantee I'm missing things. I always miss things. Next, it's Action Comics 992, and it's the Oz Effect Aftermath. And this is, for me, an excellent story. I do feel like the Oz Effect, the previous storyline did end a little bit too abruptly. Now, I didn't do any comic talk episodes on it on account of being busy, recovering from surgery, and just doing other things, but I figured this would be a good time to jump back in. It did end pretty quickly. I was hoping for one more issue and to end there to be something bigger, but it is kind of neat that with the revelation that Mr. Oz is jor-el, is Superman's dad, and he was yanked out of time before Krypton exploded and then plopped onto planet Earth amongst some of the worst that the planet Earth has to offer. Superman was picked up by this loving family and taken care of and raised in Kansas and went to a regular high school and was surrounded by love and hope. And so this is what we see grown up. We see a nature plus nurture Superman who is a hopeful, strong, loving Superman. Well, not so much the same for Jor-el. Jor-el was already a man when he was dropped on Earth, and he experienced the very worst that mankind has to offer, and so he has very little hope for mankind, whereas Superman has all the hope in the world for mankind. And so how did this affect him, Mr. Oz? Well, Mr. Oz just wanted to grab Superman and Lois and John and take them to a world where they would be safe and free from what was to come. Something even greater that Mr. Oz, Jor-el, said, nah, you can't even stop this, son, and you're Superman. This is something that is too big for you, so I want to try and save you. Obviously, that didn't go according to plan. Superman ends up depowering Jor-el, snapping the Mr. Oz staff in half, which was poisoning his mind, and in the end, Jor-el gets taken away. That's all, and that's where we're left with it. Now, Superman himself is a little bit messed in the head because he's like, if my dad isn't who I thought he was, then who am I? And he's having a crisis of his own personality based on this meeting with his dad. He feels like the dad that he had always thought his father was, the good man, has been a lie. When technically it hasn't, because the history of his father that he's known the entire time until he met Mr. Oz was absolutely correct. It would have been the events on Earth afterwards that corrupted his mind and twisted him into a hopeless, darker being. I still don't see Mr. Oz as a villain. I think he was trying to do what he could to save his son, and I think he had the only opinion of human beings that he possibly could have, granted where he landed and the people that he experienced and what he saw. So I still think he was trying to do right. I just think the whole lack of hope thing is really messing with Superman because he's responsible for doing a lot of really horrible things on Earth before Superman dealt with him. And that's big for Superman, that his father, his biological father, to him is not what he thought. Now, to me, I look at this and go, well, Superman is who he is also because of the Kents. The Kents instilled a lot of their goodness onto him. And then it's also nature versus nurture. So that's the nurture part, the Kents, but then you have nature. Superman, I believe, just is the way he is because he is the way he is. Now, some of that also would be the nurture of his biological mom and dad with all of the information that was fed to him in the spaceship on the way over to Earth. And then you also have the fortress. So there's this whole big mix of nature and nurture creating who he is. And I think regardless of who his father is currently, I don't think that that really would affect who Superman is currently. But regardless of that, that's gotta mess with your head. You think your father is a certain way, you think he's a hero, and then you find out that he might not be the man you thought he was, and it makes you question your entire life and your entire being. So I totally get it. Superman is so bothered by this. Over the issue, you find out he's been missing work. He's been working so hard at trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Even Batman is concerned with him. And he's concerned with him friend to friend, as in Bruce to Clark. Everyone is worried about Superman because everyone knows how big of a deal this is for Kal-El to have this revelation. You can tell that the friendship and the bond of the rest of the League towards Superman is so strong. Everyone loves him so much that they're just trying to help him. And Hal Jordan is no exception. Hal Jordan shows up and he's like, hey, listen, I'm here on Mogo and I have some information that you requested. Why don't you come here and look at it? Come look at it with me. Let's look at it together. And so Superman flies through a Green Lantern Acme hole and ends up at Mogo, the planet Mogo, which is also a Green Lantern, which is very cool, in case you didn't know. While on Mogo, they access the files of Toma Ray, which gives them a historical look at the moment of Krypton's demise. So when the planet was destroyed, there's real-time footage of it for Superman to look at. And he needs to know, was my rocket the only rocket that left Krypton, or was there anything else? And so they're watching the footage, and it's got to be tough to watch the footage of your own home planet and all your kin exploding, being destroyed, and one rocket leaves, and you're watching, and no other rockets leave. But then the footage is corrupted. There's a brief moment where the footage is corrupted, and they have no idea what happened. This is very strange. Dun, dun, dun. Superman's bothered by this, obviously, so what does he do? He goes back to the Justice League Watchtower, hops on Flash's cosmic treadmill, and goes for a run. He's going back to the time when Krypton exploded. He has to go back. He has to see for himself. On a side note, I think it's very cool that Superman can also use Flash's cosmic treadmill. He can go faster than light just like Flash. A lot of people don't realize that, but how do you think he gets across the universe when he's flying so fast? He can go really, really, really fast. For as fast as you think Flash is, Superman is almost as fast as that. Not quite, but almost. I wonder what a Superman with a Green Lantern ring tapped into the Speed Force would be like. Oh my God. I'm not much one to say Superman is overpowered. They usually make his villains the right power level for him. But a Superman that's a Green Lantern with access to the Speed Force would be OP. I would actually have to agree. Still, it'd be pretty cool though. Anyhow, and that's where the issue leaves us. Superman is on the treadmill. Boom, away he goes. But there's one more thing. Just as he disappears, guess who should show up? Booster Gold! Booster Gold is like, wait, no, stop, don't go. We're a couple seconds late. He's already gone. So you know, in the next issue, Booster Gold and Superman are going to be teaming up. That is darn cool. Besides which, I miss Booster Gold. He's one of my favorite DC characters, so I'm glad to see him back in use again. And I'm glad to see him teaming up with Superman, because there's such a dichotomy of their characters here. They're both good guys, but Booster Gold is classically a very selfish, self-centered character, and Superman always rubs off on him the right way. Anyhow, friends, that's all I have the time for, so thank you so much for tuning in and watching this episode of Comic Talk with me. I know it's been a while. For those of you who enjoy this, this will be becoming a regular thing on the channel again. I just had to jump back into it and find the right place to do it. For those of you who are new here, I do action figure reviews, custom figures. I do all kinds of DC Comics, mostly DC Comics related content on this channel, not just Comic Talk, although Comic Talk is a weekly fixture. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't so you never miss a video. Leave any comments you have in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.